And there's a very famous joke, or famous actual witticism by two rather catty women who were socialized, this is supposedly true, who were rivals in, I think, New York City, the social scene. And whenever there were social events, there would always be some kind of a competition between them to be the most noticed. So once they were both sort of going to make an entrance into a room, and they arrived at the doorway just at the same time. And they were both very witty, and one woman deferred like this and said, "Age before beauty." And then the woman sailed in and said, "Pearls before swine." Terrible, the devil quoting scripture for his own purpose. But every time I hear that, unfortunately, that's what I think of. Yeah, sorry. I sat there and decided whether to impose it on you. And because I love you so much, I thought, misery loves company. Isn't that also another aphorism? Okay, here we are, friends. I also just want to say to you, just by the way, many of you know, because I published among our members at least, the next 4 months for me are a resumption of the life that was interrupted to write Lightbearer and also to have COVID with all the rest of us. Literally a decade ago, Swamiji changed my instructions, which was, prior to that, it essentially, when the opportunity had come to have us go to a different colony, I always thought I would move around a lot more. Many of my founding members, my peers, have lived in 5 or 6 different communities. I've lived in 2. I started at Ananda Village, and I've been here for, at the end of this year, it'll be 36 years. It's quite a long run, and a good one. I've enjoyed it tremendously, and I'm not moving, but 12 years ago, because it was the last year of Swami's life, 10 years ago, excuse me, in just a few months before he passed, in the way of things here, Swamiji would come to visit, and he always liked to go to the Stanford Shopping Center. There were a few stores. It was a little different than it is now. It was less high-end and more practical. And we would go to the Stanford Shopping Center also because it was beautiful there with the gardens. So in the way that odd things happened in the parking lot of the Stanford Shopping Center, Swami stopped and gave me the rest of my life instructions. And the essence of it was that he wanted me to shift my self-definition from responsibility for any one community to being responsible for Master's work in a global way. And I had already been feeling that, and I'd started doing more webinars in my living room, nothing compared to what I've done in the last few years, but the concept was coming to me that I should expand. And he suggested actually at that time that I change my address, that I just walk away from here. I couldn't get anybody to take that instruction seriously. Nobody in the bigger Ananda besides Swami thought that made any sense. And Swami appointed Shanti to take over the responsibilities that I had, all of which has all worked beautifully. So I started tootling around the world a little bit at that point, mostly in India. And I said to Swamiji when I was in India, when you said world, did you mean India? He said, no, I meant world. I asked him, did he mean the USA? And he said, it was very interesting. He said, I'm of 2 minds about the USA, like this. Because once you, especially when you get to India or even to Italy or to countries where there's more heart, you sort of become a little of 2 minds about the American temperament. On one hand, of course, this is who I am, and this is who we are, and we've made a glorious family in this country, and why not? So he said of 2 minds, and then he said, go where there's energy. So that's been the motto. But I realized at that time, actually, I wasn't settled enough in myself, is the only way I can put it, because I did travel in India, and I did travel a little bit, but there was a little wobble in the field, is the way I would say. And then I had to stop and write the book, and then we all had to stop and have a pandemic, which took a little time, but he was pretty definite about what I should do. So it's very interesting, and this is also for everyone, not just about me. When you feel a change is coming, it's always a little bit of a question mark as to how you relate to that. And I'm a very interesting blend of very practical and absolute airhead, so whenever I have to make something happen, it's always a little bit of a trick. But I realized in retrospect, interestingly, because everything starts on the causal level, then goes to the astral, and then goes to the material, I realized I just said yes inside myself. And by this point, I'm really comfortable here. I have my little scene just about set up as perfect as it can be, with all my wonderful friends and great helpers, and nice place to live, nice housemate, everything, the cameras, everything's perfect. So there's always this force between, which is what life is about. There's this force that's pulling you forward to be bigger and different, and then there's the part that says, we're doing fine just as we are. I joke a little bit, but it's not a joke. And my phrase, and maybe you won't like the sound of it, but I love it. Like, I wrote Light Bearer, which was the thing that Swamiji really gave me to do from when I was quite young. So I say to myself, I can die on Light Bearer. Meaning, if I have to go to my life review with nothing but that book in my hand, they'll probably at least let me into a lower astral world, I can die on that. I actually think, and it's very valuable for all of us, especially if you're of my age, but for all of us, we should always be ready to die on whatever it is that we've already done, which is to say we should be at peace. Even if you have to say, well, I squandered a lot of opportunities this lifetime and chose the softer rather than the more arduous road, it's vitally important that in our own consciousness we are confident that we are loved by God. Nothing spoils our transition from this world into the next, like anxiety over what I did and didn't do. And this is why Jean Vianney, the French saint, said, if you knew how much God loves you, you would die for joy. Now what you have to understand is there's no qualifying adjectives on that. There's nothing. It's just because this is who we are. And we are doing the best that we can do, but almost by definition. We can have an idea in our mind that we could be better and stronger and more this and more that and more disciplined, but hey, if you aren't, it's just an idea. You just are what you are. And all that we really have to offer is the fact that we're sincere and we're doing the best we can. And we have all the time in the world. We have all the time beyond the world. We have infinity. And it serves us, above all, to hold a positive point of view, always. Remember, there's the story in the path about Swamiji visited one of the devotees in the hospital, and he was near the end of his life, and he was tormented with the fact, oh, I've done so many wrong things in my life. And when Swamiji later was with Master and told Master how the man was responding, Master got very, very sad. Not because the man had done bad things, but because he was about to leave this world and all he could think of was his limitations. And it's just a mental habit to think of our limitations. We can just as easily, we all have something we can claim, and even if we don't, we can claim the resolution that next time I'll do better. There's always a way to be closer to what Jean Vianney says to us. If we knew how much God loves us, we would die for joy. That's what we should die on. We should die on the fact that we're loved. And it's a compliment to Divine Mother that she has a big enough heart to love us no matter what. Master's promise to us is that he would come again and again, a trillion times if necessary, to pick up one stray brother. He doesn't say, well, you've been such a sloucher all along, I'm just going to leave you. All the more so, because if we are weak, then we need God's support and love even more. We have to turn our entire way of thinking into something else. That's all, just turn it over. Now, coming back where I was going, talking about a wobble in the field that I don't feel as much. We'll see when I get started. But what I'm really saying to you is in the next 4 months, I'll actually be resident here a little bit over about 4 weeks, a little more. First half of September, first half of October. So I get to travel in the U.S., to the East Coast, to Texas, my home state. I was on my way to Texas when the pandemic hit, and I've promised them all this time I'd go back. So we'll go there, and then from Texas we'll go on to Europe. And then I'm going to do a little tour with Darshan in a van, and we'll have a good time, and I will write you letters. And immediately tomorrow, I'm going to go into retreat for about 4 weeks. It won't be a strict seclusion. If you want to text or write to me, I'm happy to be in touch. I have too many things I have to take care of. But I did feel inside myself just a little solitude, a little bit of quiet, and just the opportunity. I have wondered, because 36 years is an astrological cycle of 12 years, so I thought when the 36 came, there would be some kind of a shift. And to be quite honest with you, then I'll be back because I'm responsible for the school play in February and March. I'll be here through Easter, maybe India in January. And Jamal in India, who runs their online program, this is a news report. It's intermittently a sermon. We'll go back to it in just a moment. Jamal, who runs the online program for India, is a very good friend of mine, and he's decided that he's responsible for my destiny, and I'm quite happy to turn it over to him. So we're talking about the Southern Hemisphere, South Africa, Australia, New Zealand. None of these are going to be big. This is not going to be big marching in with bands into the largest halls in the city. This is going to be moving around, meeting all these people who have aligned themselves with the home study courses, but that nobody's met yet. We're just going to go see. So in 2012, Swami said to me when I wasn't resisting him, but he was enforcing it. He said, basically, you were born for this. And so now we are. But I'm saying it also to all of you because we are really in this together. And what has sustained me for my whole life since I walked into Ananda was the fact that we are a community. I mean, we are really something else. And this kind of friendship, this kind of unity for high purpose is a gift beyond measure. And I just don't mean living together, but just being together as we are, coming together as we do, as we did last evening. Many of you were there, as we do every Sunday, and in countless other ways. We've been a little interrupted because of the pandemic, but not in spirit. It's extremely impressive how intact this community is, considering the disruption that we've been through. And all of this today is July 31st, which one doesn't think of as a national holiday or anything like that. When we lived at Ananda Village in the first years and were so isolated, I was always surprised when the mail was delivered on January 5th. That was Master's birthday, or May 9th. Or May 19th, which is Swami Kriyananda's birthday, or September 12th, the anniversary of his discipleship. I live so much in the world of these are the momentous moments that I was surprised that the banks were open and the U.S. mail would come. And I would imagine a day, which I'm sure will come, when Dwapara is fully established and whatever is going to happen, happens. And we actually are paying attention to the times that really matter. Although 3 days ago was National Avocado Day, which did seem notable to me. Just moving right along, okay. It's not comparable to January 5th. I think they can deliver the mail and we can do our banking, but nonetheless. A friend of mine grew up in Southern California, and it was the time when we were children there, where the orchards were being taken over by housing tracts. So some of the orchards, so there was an abandoned avocado orchard, and it's a boy, a friend. And when they were children, they used to go to the avocado orchard and throw rotten avocados at each other. You can imagine? Can you imagine how satisfying it would be for a little boy to have a smishy avocado and bean one of his friends with it? So he doesn't like National Avocado Day. He has a very different relationship to it. But today is July 31st, and in 1949, of July 31st, was the day that Paramhansa Yogananda was at the garden party in which he planted the words in the ether. And now, this is a very hard thing to read out loud because some of you have in your mind the incident when Nirmala was reading this out of the path, and she would say, "This day," he thundered, punctuating every word, "marks the birth of a new era." And Swami interrupted her, grabbed the book out of her hand, and practically broke the sound system, saying, "This day marks the birth," and I can't. So I'll go somewhere in between. But in a very real sense, this is, I say September 12th, when Swamiji met Master and became his disciple, but it even started on this day because of the way Master said this. This day, Master thundered, punctuating every word, marks the birth of a new era. Now bear in mind, Master was not an orator for the sake of oration. Every word that he spoke was God-inspired. And when he said, this marks the birth of a new era, he wasn't hyperbole. He was really drawing a line in the sand. This was his incarnation come to bring in Dwapara Yuga and intentional communities where like-minded souls could band together was a fundamental part of Babaji and Jesus's plan about how the ills of this world are going to be healed by widespread understanding of the presence of God within and the presence of God with one another. Master writes this in his own autobiography. All other efforts to create peace and to heal this world will ultimately fail, because the reason things fail is because egoic desires become more powerful than our bonds with one another. So everything has to come back down to a change of consciousness within us. So Master says, my spoken words are registered in the ether, in the Spirit of God, and they shall move the West. Interesting, isn't it? Western civilization has become the defining force. It's becoming a combination of East and West, but nonetheless, the innovative energy. And Master came to the West. He could have started this work in any country in the world, and he came to Los Angeles, California, and started pushing as my spoken words are registered in the ether and in the Spirit of God. Isn't that just marvelous? What does that mean? My spoken words are registered in the Spirit of God? What kind of a consciousness can make a declaration like that? This is the beginning of a new era. Self-realization has come to unite all religions. In other places, Master really explains that, and it's very important to understand it, because otherwise you come into this place and you hear us tell you that we're the leaders and we're the ones, and you go next door and it turns out, wow, they're the leaders and they're the ones, and what do you know, same across the street. When he emphasized the power of self-realization, he wasn't talking about any kind of sectarian issue. Self-realization is a principle. And the principle is that we realize the presence of God within us, we recognize the presence of God in one another, and just think how everything changes after that. Isn't that so? The basic premise of education for life, which our living wisdom schools represent. Education for life is the articulated system that Swami gave us from Master's basic principles, is what if self-realization were the goal of life? What if the goal of life is to experience the presence of God within us and to see the presence of God in everyone else? What would education look like? When I used to have to travel, when I did in my first 16 years living at Ananda village and going out from that rural community and trying to explain to people what we were doing, because even now, I've traveled, modestly around the world. I've seen quite a few places. Ananda village still stands as an absolutely unique expression. There's just nothing like it. And all definitions and understanding are based on when you have some point of comparison. You know what a lemon is because you can say it's yellow instead of orange, and it's a little smaller and more sour. But you have to have both of them to know. So when you have a singleton, and so I would try to explain to people, Ananda village is how you would build a society if everyone understood that self-realization is the goal. I mean, look at the society we have all over the world now. It's based on money and power, self-aggrandizement, getting what I want. That's, this is what the planet Earth at this time is: rajasic and selfish. This is basically, not everybody's horrible by any means. We're generalizing about the flow, but it's not. We don't have a society, and God, we certainly don't have schools that are based on the idea that self-realization is the goal. Isn't that nice? So how would you build a society? That's what Master's saying. Self-realization has come to unite all religions. Unite, unite, unite. Yoga means union. That's what the whole story is about. We're trying to bring it into harmony, and we must begin within. But then Master says, we must go on, not only those who are here, and it was some hundreds of people, but thousands of youths and old people must go north, south, east, and west. Don't you just love the way he says it? And when Swami says that, north, south, east, west. So you just get the picture of, it's just not one direction, it's every direction. To cover the earth with little colonies. Every time I say that, I sort of see us all kind of, just like covering the earth with little colonies. Demonstrating that simplicity of living plus high thinking lead to the greatest happiness. That's just what it comes down to. Simplicity of living plus high thinking lead to the greatest happiness. And that's the last word, happiness. This is what he's planting in the ether. This is what's going to be possible. And here we all are. Let me just a moment, I have a thought here that I can't. What was I thinking right there? Oh yes, I was remembering when we filmed the movie Finding Happiness, which was actually, as it happened, filmed in 2012, the last year of Swamiji's life. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. It was a full, it wasn't a documentary, but it was a combination. We had one fictional character who played the journalist, and she came to the real Ananda community and then talked to all these people and everything. We all played ourselves, and it got a little, art and reality got all mixed up because she was quite enamored of everything, and pretty soon she was more or less playing herself. In fact, she was just playing herself. She ended up, Swami gave her a spiritual name. She became really one of us in the process. I was involved in it, and I was by helping to set what the story would be, what points we wanted to get across. Because Swami wrote a script, and when the director came, Ted Nicolau, very wonderful man, when Ted came, he had people read for their parts. And then he went to Swami afterwards and he said, when your people read the script, they're really, really terrible. He said, but when I just ask them the same questions and let them speak from their hearts, they're wonderful. Swami laughed in his inimitable way and said, I didn't intend to follow the script. By all means, let them talk. However, when you're spending however many thousands of dollars you spend per hour, when you have a full professional film crew, we couldn't just let people babble on. We had to go like this a little bit. So there was a certain point in the film toward the end, because one of the things we wanted to say was go north, south, east, and west, cover the world with little colonies. So we came to the part in the film where we had worked it out, where Swami was going to give a clarion call for founding communities. Now, I was always a little concerned about this. Any of us with any experience in founding communities, which by that point I'd been working on 2, knew just that it was just like, it's not like, oh good, we'll just all go out and start communities. It was a little harder than that. So we're filming there, and everything's all set up, and it's the moment when Swami's supposed to give the clarion call. I mean, this was just a skeleton. And instead, he just kind of fizzles, like nothing happens. And this is like the whole big moment in the film. Ted, who is a very experienced director, okay, he said, I think it's time for a lunch break, okay, let's just take a break. He doesn't say anything at all. But as soon as there's a break, he grabs me like this and he says, we're counting on Swami actually putting a little energy behind founding communities. As I recall, this was the whole point. Yes, Ted, that's true. And then we both started to laugh. I said, the reason he said that is because he knows that she's not going to be able to do it, and he's too honest. It's just, there's more involved than just saying go out and do it. However, we all agreed, so I went downstairs to where Swami was. I was always the deliverer of bad news. Swamiji, Ted was a little concerned because, you're supposed to give this call to found communities. Swami says, oh, it's very hard to found communities. Almost no one can do it. Yes, sir, we actually all know that, but this is the decision we made, and we still have to, do something here. So he, of course, was very cooperative, and he found a way to be both truthful and at least give us some drama there that we could put a little music behind and have the whole, go on alone, don't look back. We got the whole thing, and we worked it. So this is the reality that we're working with. On one hand, thousands of youths must go north and south, and on the other hand, it's not that easy. And the answer to that dilemma is actually really simple. We're not the ones who are doing it. When Swamiji was talking about on one of Master's holidays, Mahasamadhi, or his birthday, he was talking to us about the absolute necessity for us to see ourselves as channels for the masters, if we're disciples, channel for a higher power, for the angels, however you perceive it, for Divine Mother, not only for the good that we can do for the world, but as a way to transform ourselves. It's like we have to be channels. And I'm going to actually refer to the reading. Watch, I'm going to tie it in. At the very end, it says, those who are not willing to serve, to do service to others. Doing service to others is how we free ourselves from our limitation. But when we think, I am going to do the service, we're taking the energy in a way that will not actually uplift what we really have to do. And we have to see ourselves as just windows for a divine energy. And in this talk, Swami was saying, I love this, he said, and don't think about whether you're worthy or not to be a channel. And then he says it in his wonderful way, of course you're unworthy. Just like, don't even belabor the point another second. Of course you're unworthy and incompetent, probably along with it. He didn't say that, but that's my point of view. We can't do anything on our own. But we have so much to give if we just open ourselves to be channels of Divine Mother's light, of Master's ray. And Swami turned it in such an interesting way. He said, if you think that they can't use you, it's not yourself that you're denigrating, it's the Master. He can work through anybody, And talent is not required. What's required is sincerity. That's all. Many years ago, many of you have heard me say, when Swami was passing out compliments that actually sounded like compliments, I put myself in such a way that it would have been so rude not to give me one. He was just like, did you notice that I'm also sitting here? Kind of like this. So he was forced to say, that's how I heard it, Asha, you're very sincere, which I heard as damning with faint praise if I'd ever heard anything. I just thought he couldn't say that I was nice or capable, because I wasn't either of those things. You're very sincere. And I fell into a depression. I really did. And I was just moping about like this. And Swami basically, not after a little while, he said, what's wrong with you? Oh, you told so-and-so that they had a great future and this, and you just told me that I was sincere. Swami looked so startled. He said, Asha, sincerity is everything. Isn't that liberating? Sincerity is everything. That means we are authentically following the path that means the most to us. That's what it means. We are honestly and truly being ourselves. And if we're honestly and truly being ourselves, what more? What more can a mother want from you? This is who we are. You made me. This is how I am. But that energy can pass through us. We can be instruments. And this world will not be changed. All those people who have all the power and who get to be on television and all that stuff that's going on, which is just enormous. And with the internet, it just floods into our houses. We see it all. And everybody thinks they're so important. They aren't. The divine power is important. And some people who are well-known are acting on behalf of the divine, and many are not. And those who are unknown are often doing much more to change this world because we're changing ourselves. So don't worry about anything, Coming back to my own little drama here, the news report, I knew I needed to make this happen. I did not know how it was going to happen, but inwardly I said yes. I just said yes to my own life. And you say yes to your own life, and you say it in cooperation with, Master, I'm sincerely doing the best that I can do, and it's up to you to sort it out. And that doesn't mean that anything different, dramatic, or noticeable to anyone else on the planet will happen. But one by one, we discover the presence of God within us, and then begin to see God around us. And you watch, if we're here, or from the astral world, or for our children, or for our children's children. Master's words are planted in the ether, and in the Spirit of God, self-realization is here to unite us. Forget the words religion. To unite us in the only unity that matters. Our individual relationship with God and our ability to share that with all. God bless you.
We have what might be a slightly unexpected treat for you, which is two of Swamiji's songs that he set to music of Shakespeare's poetry. And first we'll sing Fairy's Lullaby, which is from A Midsummer Night's Dream. And then we'll sing Come Away Death, which is from Twelfth Night.
You spotted snakes with double tongue, thorny hedgehogs be not seen, newts and blind worms do no wrong, come not near our fairy queen. Philomel with melody, sing in our sweet lullaby. La 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 lullaby, la 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 lullaby. Never harm nor spell nor charm, come our lovely lady night. So good night, so good night, sweet lullaby. You spotted snakes with double tongue, thorny hedgehogs be not seen, Newts and blind worms do no wrong. Come not near our fairy queen. Philomel with melody, sing in our sweet lullaby. La 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 lullaby. La 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 lullaby. Never harm nor spell nor charm, come our lovely lady night. So good night, good night, good night with lullaby. So good night, good night, so good night with lullaby. Come away, death, and in sad cypress let me be laid. Fly away, breath, I am slain by a fair, cruel maid. My shroud of white stuck all with you. Oh, prepare it, my part of death no one so true did share it. Not a flower sweet, on my black coffin let there be strown. Not a friend greet my poor corpse where my bones shall be thrown. 1,000 sighs to save, lay me, oh, where's that true lovers never find my grave to weep there. Sad true lovers never find my grave to